different to stop the illegal activity of our elected officials? And I'll say this again, let you think on it just a second. Let you jump up for the question as he permits. What can you do different to stop the illegal activity of our elected officials? Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Kelly. Ladies and gentlemen, as most of you probably know, that the reason why John Boehner is no longer the Speaker of the House is because our Walter Jones stood up against him. And another one is the fact that Kevin McCarthy did not succeed in as Speaker of the House because Walter stood up against him. Walter essentially told the Republican leadership, make sure you clean up your own house before you go up against the Democrats and criticize them. Walter Jones is a man of impeccable character, great faith, and he's a wonderful statesman. Walter is the man who will stand up for what is right. And he is taking a beating from a lot of his fellow Republicans. But I will tell you this, that Mark Meadows in the Freedom Caucus and other members of Walter's Liberty Caucus say that he's by far one of the most honest men in Congress. But countless times, Walter has stood up to make Republicans accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. And Mr. Law, I think you're jumping up. Here you go. 2 minutes.
Sure, thank you. I think this is actually a really bad problem, and I think we've all lost confidence in what's going on in D.C. I don't think that we trust what's going on in D.C. One great example is it's come to light that there's actually a fund to pay off sexual harassment claims with our tax dollars. I mean, it's just ridiculous. First of all, I'd like to advocate the release of that information, one, because I think that should come to light because our tax dollars are being spent for people doing those type of acts. Next, I think that we have to evaluate the candidates that we elect, and we have to make sure that they have a good moral compass to guide them on their journey up there in D.C. Because guess what? It's a horrible place. It's nasty, it's filthy, it's dangerous. We have to have people that are willing to go up there to arm themselves with a shield of honor and fight for us up there. And look, we have to make sure that people go up there for the right reasons, because sometimes people choose to go up there for the wrong reasons, and we should not elect those people. We need to find people that don't want to go up there for a career, don't want to be influenced by special interest groups. Pick people for the right reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law. And we have Mr. Scott Dacey.
How many of you folks received an email or a piece of mail from Congressman Jones within the last week or so? Talking about maybe where he is on life, maybe where he is on earmarks, where he might be on veterans legislation. A number of my friends received those emails, received those letters that came in the mail. You know, what we have here is a system that polices itself within the United States House of Representatives. It's the Office of Congressional Ethics. Now, there's supposed to be a blackout period where members of Congress are not supposed to be sending out letters advocating for the work that they've been so great at doing within 90 days of an election. It's a blackout period. Everybody understands this. For some reason, Walter Jones felt as though this didn't apply to him and said, well, we're just going to go ahead and send this out and just hope for the best. Let me go ahead and just tell the people about all the legislation that I've co-sponsored while serving in the House of Representatives. Now, to me, that's legislative welfare, when you're riding on the back of somebody else's work, time after time after time. But he went ahead and sent out all these letters, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of them there may be, to all the people of Eastern North Carolina to say, aren't I a great congressman? Using your money, the taxpayers' dollars, in order to get that word across. And you can file a statement with the Office of Congressional Ethics, but then it takes 2 members of that committee to actually read the complaint. And then it takes another group of folks to stand up and say, you know what, maybe somebody's got a real problem here. It takes forever to have anything done about it. And when you're going into an election and you've got the congressman having his professional staff out there sending out letters to people left and right to talk about just how great he is, to me,
Thank you,
there's
Mr.
something wrong.
Dacey, for your response to the questions. And again, we'll offer up a 1-minute rebuttal for anybody that would like it. Okay, no takers on that, so we'll move on to our North Carolina House and North Carolina Senate. All right, the next question for you gentlemen are, what were we thinking with North Carolina House Bill 2? It's an embarrassment. Please fix it. So I guess this statement is asking you what you would do about North Carolina House Bill 2. So Mr. Early or Mr. Kidwell, either one of you like to jump up first? Here you go, Mr. Kidwell. Yes, don't blow us all out.
I'll try and be gentle. Okay, so North Carolina House Bill 2. A lot of people took that to mean that everybody is impacted and allowing men and women to share the same bathroom. Well, that is the case. In fact, it would have allowed men or boys in the bathroom in all of our schools. And I don't see where we need to fix that problem. I don't want men in the bathroom with my granddaughter or with my wife. Okay? How many hundreds of years have we in the United States known the difference between a men's restroom and a women's restroom? Okay? I'm not going to try and defuse HB 2. I'm a strong supporter of it. I think it's important to protect our citizens. That's the job of government, is to protect each and every one of you from the people who would do you harm. Now, for years, if somebody had the proclivities to dress like a man or a woman and use that restroom, nothing was made of it. But I don't believe it's up to the government to mandate that we should do that. Okay? If a man's dressed in a dress, looks like a woman, walks in the restroom, I don't think anybody really said, hey, let's check what you have before you go in this place. We don't want to see your birth certificate before you enter that restroom. Okay? But this would have allowed any man who just woke up or any woman to walk into the opposite sex restroom. Not a good plan, guys. The only embarrassment was the media took that and ran with it. The media wanted to make North Carolina government, my friend Mike Speciale, our governor, Pat McCrory, and the rest of our General Assembly and legislature look stupid. And unfortunately, a lot of America that's not North Carolina values drank that Kool-Aid.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwell, for your response to that question. And now we're going to move on to Mr. Chuck Early, candidate for Senate, North Carolina.
When it first came out, Governor McCoy was in Dare County, and I got to meet him, and I told him, they're going to pull you in, hook, line, and sinker. And they did. All you need to do is make a statement that we need to provide more mental health for these individuals, pray for them. We don't need to be messing with this. And I do not believe it. There's some things that the government shouldn't be getting into, but we definitely need to stand firm on that, because just like Mr. Kipwell said, this is so wrong. Why is this country going so far one direction and doing these things? It's not the same values that I was raised with. It's just pure sad. And we're seeing it. We're seeing the parties get hijacked and going so far to the left, it's unbelievable. How do you think that one day that you're a man and then next thing you're a woman? I don't want my children to be involved in that. I don't want them to go into some bathroom and see some guy that side decide he's going to be a woman that day. No offense, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of sick people in this world, and I see a lot of them. And being in the healthcare profession, I have seen some things that will make your head spin. And that would make my head spin.
Thank you, Mr. Early. And I have not offered y'all a rebuttal, but Keith, would you like a rebuttal or anything on that question? Okay, got it. Just know that if y'all county commissioners, I'm gonna pull another question. Okay. What is the most pressing item for the Board of Commissioners? Again, what is the most pressing item or issues, it has there, for the Board of Commissioners? Mr. Tandy, Mr. Stan, which one? Okay.
What's going to continue to be the budget? If we don't have the money, we can't pay our services. The tax rate's going to have to change. We need to also make sure we have open door meetings like they're supposed to be. We have meetings behind closed doors. We're supposed to do what we're supposed to do there, follow the rules. Statewide, you're going behind closed doors. Don't just arbitrarily go back there. The honest person is going to be the first person taxed, first person whose values are tread upon, and the last person considered when something goes wrong. Like the House Bill 2 thing. I got friends that are gay, I got brothers gay. If he was dressed as a woman and was going to the woman's bathroom, that's fine. That's on him. I don't want to see my grandkids with that happen either. But the budget, get back to the budget is where we got problems at right now. We have to be fiscally conservative. We can't be spending money on fluff. We can't be spending money just because your buddy wants to rub your back, pat you on the back, and promise you things also. We need to make sure that we're spending money, your money. You give your kid $20 to go to the movie, and he spends $18. Does he bring the $2 back to you? No, he puts it in his pocket and spends it on something else. And that's what we're doing with our budget. You give them the money, if they don't spend it, they're going to find something else to spend it on. They're going to turn money in at the end of the year. So we need to make sure our budget's taken care of conservatively, fiscally, and cut out fluff.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Dethridge, your response to the question, do you need it repeated? Okay.
Thank you, Doug. In Beaufort County, we're overtaxed and undermanaged. We have commissioners, we have a majority Republican group of commissioners up there, oddly, and yet they have been spending at a fast rate, quicker and quicker and quicker. Our expenditures have risen dramatically over the last 4 years. As many of you know, I was county commissioner in this county for 18 years, 16 years served with Hood Richardson. I had his back most of the time. About 95% of the time I had his back, and he always got a second out of me for no other reason that we could debate the issue of spending, the issues of policy, and the issues of oversight. All three of these fit together very importantly, because you must manage your county by oversight. You have to keep an eye on everything and a hand on the till of that budget. Secondly, you must have wise policy. Thirdly, you must absolutely go into that budget and look at every item as if it was a baseline budget. And each year, you don't increase. You try to do everything you can to spend wisely and well. Some things you take out. It's important to manage that way. Now, as a county commissioner for 18 years, I never voted for a tax increase. Never. We gave real options to cut spending each year. We were just not the loyal opposition. We made dramatic changes, and we did our best. Thank you very much. If elected, I will do that once again.
Thank you, Mr. Dethridge. You can hand it to Mr. Dixon. Go in the middle of the questions here. All right, Mr. Dixon. Can the Sheriff's Department provide more security in schools without causing a higher tax rate? It's got a second part too. Can a private source provide a more cost-effective protection as the Sheriff's Department? So, can the Sheriff's Office provide more security in our schools without raising it says raising higher rates, I'm assuming that's tax rates. And can a private source provide a more cost-effective protection method than the sheriff's department?
No and no.
Okay.
One thing, the school board actually pays for the deputies that are at the schools. There's one deputy at certain schools now, most of the high schools and some of the middle schools. I don't know if they all have them now or not, but the school system actually pays for it. It still comes from the county budget. It doesn't matter if the sheriff pays for it or the school pays for it, you're the one paying for it. So you can't double your manpower and not expect your taxes to go up. Secondly, if you hire somebody that is a contract agency or something to come in and do security in schools, it's going to be just like the problem we've got now with the courthouse. Ernie dropped the ball, wouldn't let him do security because he couldn't get what he wanted, so he took his ball and hunted. So the commissioners had to hire private security out of Greenville somewhere to come in to man the doors to keep the bad people out. But what do you have? Anybody in this room can stand there and do the same thing because they don't have the power to arrest. They don't have any weapons. What are they going to do? They're going to say, you can't go in there. You've got to go back outside. So you can't get the same thing and not expect your taxes to go up.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. I'm going to take the mic from you. All right, now we're going to move on to another question for our congressional candidates. And the question is, for U.S. House, what is your stand on the tax reform bill that just passed? What is your stand on the tax reform bill that just passed? Who would like to take that first? Mr. Dacey.
If there was one issue, perhaps aside from the wall, that is more fundamental to the essence of Donald Trump, it is the tax and jobs bill that was passed by Congress in December. It's fundamental because, as Donald Trump well knows himself, with hard work comes reward. Except when you've got government that's seeking to stick their hand as deep into your pocket as possible in order to grab that cash that you've worked so hard for, so that government can then take it to spend it on whatever it wants. Donald Trump doesn't believe in that, and Scott Dacey does not believe in that. I would have voted in favor of the tax cut bill without a hesitation, because that bill provided an opportunity for the people in eastern North Carolina to have more money in their pockets that they will make a determination as to how it's going to be spent. It will then lead to greater economic vibrancy throughout our country. That will then in turn allow us as a country to reduce our debt. We do not have to go down the path that Congressman Jones took not once, not twice, but 3 times in voting against our president and voting against the tax bill, because he's concerned about the nation's debt. We have to have a more robust economy, a more vibrant economy, an economy that is based upon growth that will then allow our country to reduce our debt. That is the way that I would have voted had I been on the House floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dacey. Mr. Law, Mr. Benton? Mr. Law? Okay. There you go. Mr. Phil Law.
So I think that Representative Jones and I agree on some things, but this is one of the things that we would disagree on legislatively. I assume the reason why he voted against the bill was because it would raise the deficit, because theoretically we would be receiving less tax revenue because people's tax rates would be lower. But the problem I have with his decision-making on this is that he doesn't go one step further. So yes, it would, in short term, raise our national debt because we would be receiving less tax receipts. But long term, more people are going to have jobs. The companies are going to invest in research and development. They're going to hire more people. They're going to repatriate overseas funds. And I'm seeing it's at a rate of 15.5% that's going to be taxed on the way in. So that's somewhere around I've heard stories about $13 trillion that are overseas that companies want to bring over. So it's going to be somewhere close to, what, $600 billion right there. The reality of the situation is more people are going to be working. We've already seen this with our labor participation rate. It's rising. People are getting jobs. Actually, the U.S. Army has complained that the economy is doing so well that they're having trouble recruiting people. Our national debt will get lower, but the problem is we have to get people working. A rising tide will float all boats. I voted for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law. And finally, Mr. Benton, who is speaking for Congressman Walter Jones.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Phil. And they bring up some most relevant points. Generally speaking, Walter Jones has voted on many, many measures with Donald Trump. Okay? He's very much a supporter of President Trump and believes in what he's doing. The single most distinguishing reason why Walter did not support the tax reform bill was due to the fact of the spiraling budget. As I said before, it's $21.2 trillion. It's $174,000 per taxpayer of all the Americans in this country. Walter was trying to send a message to Congress, to President, to the Senate. We need to stop the reckless spending because, as I said before, the Secretary of Homeland Security said, the greatest threat to our national security of our country is our national deficit. Who holds the credit card for the United States of America? It's China. And I submit for your consideration, China is not our friend. Walter's trying to step up and tell us that there's trouble on the horizon. And equally as important, he doesn't want to spend our children's and grandchildren's future into oblivion because he wants our children and grandchildren to have a better life than what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. Okay, we're on the Okay. What are the reasons, or I can't quite make out the word there, that motivated you to run for office? So I guess the short of it is why are you running for office? Mr. Early?
I've been in public safety all my life. I've dedicated my life of helping people, doing the right thing. You know, I've always been behind the scenes and helping people, candidates get elected with my values. And I had this opportunity, was asked to run, needed some time to do it, to think about it, pray, meet with my family, meet with some community people. And one of the biggest things that I've decided for is some of these areas are paying, you talk about your taxes here, some of these areas are paying 80, 90, over $1 per 100. I don't want my county to be like that. I want to work with the people. I want to be able to bring jobs, work on the school systems, get into the community. I have dedicated my life to helping the sick and injured. And now I want to dedicate my life when I hopefully win in November, because there's a storm coming. If it comes, we're going to be devastated. And I'm ready to fight it. I've lived in these communities. I know these communities. They're great people. They're good Democrats. They're good independents. They're good. They have been decimated. And we have to do a lot of good things to be able to help bring some good jobs, good education. There's a lot of stuff to do. And I want to tackle these jobs. I want to be able to get into these areas to understand, not that I don't understand, is to be able to do the right thing and help.
Thank you, Mr. Early, for your response to that question. You can hand it off to Mr. Kidwell. Mr. Kidwell, what motivated you to run for North Carolina House District 79?
2 minutes isn't enough. Really, probably the thing that got me started originally was many years back. I told my wife I was tired of seeing the things that our politicians were doing. The destruction that we've seen of our country, of our values, of our constitutional rights, of our ability to run our businesses and our lives as we see fit. And I just can't stand by, and I told her this word for word, and look at my grandchildren when I lay on my deathbed and said, sorry guys, I didn't do anything. I'm going to do something. God endowed me, in case you can't tell, with a big mouth and a stiff spine. And I'm taking both of those to Raleigh. With that, I will bring 33 years in the tax business where I have fought for the taxpayers of Eastern North Carolina. I have stared down IRS agents. I have had constitutional fights with them and told them they will not violate the rights of my client. I have stared into the face of evil. And Mr. Cooper will be nothing compared to the Internal Revenue Service. Okay? So, and the two biggest problems I think we face in North Carolina is Governor Cooper and the Democratic Party. They are not the values that we espouse as North Carolinians and as Americans. I'm going to take that determination. I'm going to take my understanding of the Constitution. I've read it many a time. I've read the Federalist Papers. And I understand, I think, by and large, better than the Democrats do, what our Constitution means and what those rights are to us. I will fight for those rights for you every day, because I believe that's what America's founded on. And I'll never change from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwell. We're going to